Hi everyone, I hope you like my new background. I thought I'd show off another Romanian rug and just change things up a little bit. But like the previous video, the poet we'll be discussing today, Dontu, was also born in the Republic of Moldova, though she's lived for years in Romania in the beautiful city of Sibiu. Besides writing poetry, she also published her first collection of short stories last year. The poem I've translated, Beyond the Walls, comes from her book of poetry entitled Frame 25, published in 2015. The poems in this collection feel loosely interconnected, though they don't tell a continuous story. Beyond the Walls is a short poem, and as I read it, imagine yourself in a room, just observing and thinking. Beyond the Walls. It's not the world you see outside the window. This noise is also an object in the room, a ball tumbling onto the floor. The window is a screen you're watching, thinking it's real. From outside, it seems like a toy, blowing soap bubbles, and you don't understand why you get so worked up. The room slips between the fingers of a giant child. I think I once saw his blue eyes outside the window. Unlike the other three poems we've discussed, Beyond the Walls isn't narrative, so it's not focused on telling a story. Instead, it's a lyric poem, and it aims to create a mood. I think this is exactly the kind of poem that scares people who don't think of themselves as poetry readers. With very little context, without clear connections between actions, how are we supposed to arrive at the correct interpretation? As you were listening to the poem and imagining yourself in a room, you were experiencing two separate spaces, inside the room and outside. The division between these two spaces is what provides the structure for the poem. A window, the image that's repeated throughout the poem, is literally the object marking the limits between inside and outside, but it's also a metaphor for understanding how the world inside ourselves, i.e. the room, and the world outside interact. We can see a window, but we can also see through a window. Is a window inside or outside? The first lines warn you not to take your perception for granted. The lines read, "It's not the world you see outside the window." So, it continues, a sound you think is coming from outside changes when it reaches you in the room. It interacts with the walls and becomes a new sound. It becomes, as the poem states, an object in the room. A similar thing happens when looking out the window. The poem says you take for granted that what you see is the real world because it's happening outside of you. But you view it in the same way that you would view a movie. We experience everything through our perception, our window. Then the poem switches to the opposite perspective of being outside looking in. The window now looks like a toy blowing soap bubbles, and it makes the speaker ask, does what we think really matter so much compared to what's happening outside ourselves? We don't get an answer. Instead, the poem resolves into this incredible image of wonder, the blue eyes of a giant child looking through the window, which might also be the blue of the sky. The poem, Beyond the Walls, takes us through an experience that questions but doesn't minimize the complexity of what's subjective versus objective. It creates the kind of productive ambiguity that only poetry can create. It helps us practice a way of thinking that's necessary when wanting to relate to others whose realities we've never considered before. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please hit the like button, or share, or subscribe, or all three. Thank you.